I'm totally snowed in, so I thought I'm going to take this time and just share with you that we are stewards of the mysteries of God. I remember a song called Father Abraham had many sons, and I don't think we really get the real truth about the things that we believe and we preach. Matthew 1:1 says, "This is the genealogy of Jesus Christ, son of David, son of Abraham, son of God." There are a few scriptures that literally reveals the time periods and ages and dispensations. Now, this is very important to know because he says we are to be the stewards of the mysteries of God, which is hidden in the ages and dispensations and generations. And the scriptures that reveal these times to us, we sometimes just read it as, this is it. So one of these scriptures are 2 Peter 3. The first world was destroyed with water. The second world is preserved for fire. Now, Ephesians 3:20-21 says, "Glory be to God in the church, a world without end." Wow. So there are literally three worlds described in the Bible. The first world before the flood, the second world after the flood. The end is always determined from the beginning. Isaiah 46:10 says, the end is always determined from the beginning. So right from the beginning in Genesis, when God made the 7 days, the final day was rest. The days in Genesis 1 cannot be days. It is not literal 24-hour days as we know it on the clock. No way. Because time was only created on day 4. So our time actually only started on day 4. The human history only started on day 6 when Adam was made. You have to understand that Genesis is a book that is given in by the Spirit. It is a vision that God gave Moses on the mountain. And he wanted to see God's glory. Why? Because from Adam to Moses, death reigned. So what happened in Moses, it stopped death from reigning, but it didn't bring life. But Moses on the mountain, when he said, "Show me your glory," he was the first person that ever said, "I want to see your glory." Moses lived 430 years after Abraham. The gospel was also preached to Moses because he said they received it, but they didn't combine it with faith. But the law, instead of really guiding them, it enhanced their sin. So when Jesus Christ came, he said he had to redeem them from the curse of the law. Though the law was a schoolmaster to Christ, it was totally infiltrated with Satan's seed. Where did this come from? From the garden, when they lost the glory, it was literally a battle for seed because the wrong seed entered man. And now it was a generational battle to get the right seed. In God's creation day, there were 7 days, which are not 24-hour days, it's 7 periods. And God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. Now, John says, we know that in him was the life, and the life was the light. So God just poured his Spirit all over creation, and that's why things were created. But then the first thing he did is he separated light from darkness, and he called light day, and darkness he called night. So on day 1, he made daylight, light day. And not one of them is a 24-hour day like we know it, because days were only made on day 4. Day 1, it is to do with time, and light day has to do with realms. So the first 4 days was a separation and a dividing, light and day, water and water, land and sea. And then there was another firmament made where the sun and the moon and the stars, and they were for days and nights. That was on day 4. So then from day 4, only the filling started. He made birds and fish, man and animals, and then God rested. And all of that was called the creation day. So the creation day of God had 7 time periods, which he called days. One day is as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is as one day. The end is determined from the beginning. Now, Hebrews 4 tells us there remains a rest for the people of God. And the whole Hebrews is like Israel didn't enter this rest. So a new day had to come, but the day of rest is still waiting. So the day of creation, the week of creation with 7 days, is a day for God. But it's like a seed with a DNA inside. In case man misses it, the end will be rest. And this is the history of time. It is man fell, and then it's ever progressing towards the purposes of God, which is rest, because man was not made to die. Man was made in the light realm, and when they sinned, they fell down to the darkness. Because when Jesus came, he said, the people that sat in darkness now saw a great light. And he says the true light has now come into the world. So God himself took on man's state in order to reconcile man back to God and bring him back to the purposes of God. And this is what the whole Bible is about. But you see, we read it in separate stories. The volume of the book has a story, 40 writers, 66 books, over a period of 1,600 years, more or less. And they all write the same story. It's foreshadowing, fulfilling, foreshadowing, fulfilling. And when Jesus came, everything changed. He brought reformation. Martin Luther brought a refreshing. Jesus Christ brought the total change, because before the cross, it was like preparation. And after the cross, it is like filling. So we have to understand the scriptures that brings us to the ages and time periods and generations. And the first one that I started with is Matthew 1:1. He says, Jesus Christ, son of David, son of Abraham, son of God. It brings us into definite time periods. So in that scripture, it looks like God doesn't even talk about the garden. So all the scriptures that we read about, Jesus Christ was crucified before the foundation of the world, is not talking about the creation week. It's not talking about the earth. It's not even talking about the world before the flood. It starts in Abraham. Father Abraham is the father of faith. When he talks about the fathers, he talks about Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob.